You know the miracles of Jesus, but do you know all the people who were there? Among the crowds there were invisible characters, unnamed in the Gospels, but whose silent presence changed the course of history. Today you'll find out who they were, what they saw, and why they were forgotten. And at the end, there is a hidden detail in a famous miracle that could change the way you read the Bible forever. Jerusalem under the Middle Eastern sun. While everyone watches Jesus healing a man born blind, a young apprentice scribe, whom no one mentions in Scripture, holds an ancient scroll, watching every gesture. He was not a disciple, he was not a Pharisee, he was not part of the shouting crowd. But at that moment his gaze captured details that no one else saw. Years later, this same man would witness another miracle, and without knowing it, would become one of the invisible pieces. Let us return to Capernaum before that day. Jesus is about to multiply loaves and fishes. The crowds stir, but behind them, a small group of travelers watches in silence. Among them, a foreign woman who, without speaking to Jesus, witnesses the impossible and carries this memory into old age. Later, she would tell the story to a boy, and that boy would grow up to become one of the early leaders of the church. These invisible connections are repeated in marriages, in healings, in deliverances, always with someone on the sidelines, seeing everything but never being mentioned. And this is where a detail begins to emerge, a pattern that no one has ever noticed. The fictional historian Elias Ben Uri, an expert on first-century culture, explains, "The Gospels do not mention every face present, but archaeological records and oral traditions indicate that certain silent witnesses influence the spread of the stories about Jesus." And researcher Dr. Miriam Haddad adds, "Some of Jesus' healings would not have come down to us without these anonymous observers. They were not central figures, but they were conduits of the living memory of what they saw." Now think, how many stories you know about Jesus were passed down by word of mouth, starting with someone who doesn't even appear in the biblical text? Remember the apprentice scribe and the foreign woman? They didn't know each other, but there are indications that their stories crossed paths years later, and that this meeting was decisive for what would come next. If this is true, perhaps these invisible characters are more important than we imagine. And here's the promised detail. In the miracle of the raising of Lazarus, a figure is mentioned almost imperceptibly, someone who has been in two other miracles, always in the background, always watching. If the clues are correct, this person may have been the missing link between three of the most powerful events in Jesus' ministry. But that's a story for the next video, where we will follow the trail of this character and find out what happened to him after the crucifixion.